All right. Well, you're going to probably see two videos come out in pretty quick succession today. If you're a subscriber to my YouTube video, my YouTube channel, you'll see two of these videos get uploaded today. I apologize. The previous week, the week before Thanksgiving, I was unavailable. I did upload a video that was done by Mason Isom and Ryan Anderson. It was audio only. So that was, I believe, Jonah and Micah. And then last week was just hard to try to figure out a time to do a video, and we ended up just forgetting to do it. So I'm sorry, but I wanted to do this really quickly because I actually had a couple of you reach out and say, hey, we'd like a little bit of information for these three minor prophet books that we have for this week. I know some of you probably are looking at catching up on Jonah and Micah probably yesterday and today. So if you haven't done them, I thought I'd just give you a really quick look at a couple of things. If you haven't done Jonah and Micah, those are two really prime storylines. Jonah is just a fabulous and super relevant story about second chances, mercy, compassion. If you need to watch the VeggieTales version to wrap your brain around it, feel free. But it's super relevant for a teenager who's looking for that second chance. Okay, so don't skip that. Micah's good because you have Micah 5 that is prophecies of the birth of the Messiah and where he comes from out of Bethlehem. And we're starting December. That's just a good time. That could be a good thing to do. And you can talk about prophecy, and you can talk about the nature of Jesus Christ as it explains in Micah 5. So there's a couple of good places. What I wanted to do just really quickly is Nahum, Habakkuk, and Zephaniah. Just real fast, there's some good resources if you just want some summaries. Again, I would say the Bible Project videos are pretty great on these. They're only about 5 or 6 minutes for each book, and it lays out structure and it lays out overall themes, and it may be helpful to you. But what I wanted to do just really quickly is I have my Jewish study Bible that is done by the Jewish Publication Society. And I like this study Bible because they give kind of an introduction to each book. As one teacher told me this morning, as I was observing his class, he feels like he's been teaching the same lesson for the past, 2 months, because the nature of these prophets, starting in Isaiah and all the way through, they're talking about the wickedness of Israel and impending doom and destruction, and the Lord is going to scatter, but eventually he's going to extend an arm of mercy and gather in. That's been a constant kind of theme. And my family, we've been reading the Book of Mormon in the mornings, and we've completed First Nephi, and guess what? That's Nephi's message. Nephi's message is impending doom for Jerusalem, scattering, gathering, and what's interesting is kind of how the tone shifts a little bit with Nahum, Habakkuk, and Zephaniah. So let me just show you really quickly. I just wanted to read a couple of sections of these introductions. So Nahum. So Nahum is interesting because it's a book, a pronouncement against Nineveh, which is interesting because we just had, or if you've last week, or if you're doing it this week, with Jonah, the people of Nineveh have been given a second chance, and according to the book, they've repented and destruction is kind of averted. Well, in Nahum, we have this prophetic, warning against their sin and eventual destruction. So let me just kind of read how this kind of works out, okay? So the book is subdivided in a couple different ways. but three main sections. The first section deals mainly with the Lord's character and responses to opponents, to Israel or enemies. Okay, that really is kind of the first 15 verses of chapter 1. The second section, it links the actions of the Lord to Judah's eventual joy and restoration and freedom from oppression. Okay. It does get to, in that second section, it references the end of the fall of Nineveh. Okay. And then the last section, which is chapter 3, dwells on kind of Nineveh's sin, Nineveh's kind of hubris, which is understood as a challenge to the Lord and the fall of the city. So indirectly, so here's how this study Bible kind of puts this. Indirectly, it returns to God's character and attributes. The book really is trying to help us see God, even in these pronouncements of destruction on some of the enemies of Israel. So I would challenge you, as you're studying it to teach it, look for some attributes of Christ here. This is Jehovah, so we're talking Christ-like attributes here. If you focus on Christ-like attributes in Nahum, this will be an edifying experience for the youth. Okay, I'm going to switch quickly to Habakkuk. We have this is kind of an interesting book. Okay, it is as it says here. It says, from the perspective of the intended readers, the text presents Habakkuk's vision as preceding the fall of Babylon. So now we're switching from Nineveh to Babylon. It's hard to kind of date this, right? But here's how it lays it out. Okay. The book contains a dialogue between this prophet and the Lord, and it can be divided into 4 parts. You've got Habakkuk's first complaint, that's chapter 1, verses 2 and 4, and then the Lord's response, 5 through 11. You've got Habakkuk's second complaint, verses 12 through 17, and then the Lord's response, which is chapter 2. The book concludes then with a psalm, okay, which is chapter 3, and it kind of has its own little section, right? But ultimately, this is a prophet asking a question, the Lord giving answers. And I think the curriculum does pretty good here, where it gives us opportunities to ask, what do we do when we have questions? Like, how do we approach this? Would be an interesting kind of acquiring spiritual knowledge section to go back and use the beginning part of the core document and talk about the purpose of questions and the Lord's answers, right? So I wanted to just kind of anyway, that's kind of how Habakkuk is it's a kind of a question asked and a response given, and this dialogue between God and his prophet. There's opportunities to teach about the role of prophets here and how that kind of plays into our current situation in these latter days. Okay, do we believe in living prophets and in their role, right? Now, Zephaniah is an interesting book. Zephaniah is, and I would highly recommend the Bible Project, at least for Zephaniah, as it gives some really good explanations, some themes. Okay, it's kind of set during the Josiah time frame, and it's interesting because in the book of Kings, Josiah is kind of set up as this grand reformer and getting Israel back in line with with the law. Zephaniah is during this time frame, and he's pronouncing some woes still. He's still giving some warnings to the people. So it's interesting because you got a history book that kind of sets Josiah up on a pedestal, and then we got a prophetic writing that's saying, you guys are still not doing this right. And there's even some allusions to the fact that Josiah dies in battle, and a little bit of pride maybe that led him into battle. So just so you're aware, of kind of that historical context, right? Now, the book, it begins like most of these other books where there's an introduction and then it moves right into its prophetic kind of utterances. It announces severe judgment against Judah. And if you notice, the first two are actually against the enemies. If you're looking at Nahum and Habakkuk, it's against, these are pronunciations against enemies to Judah. Well, now we're back here in Zephaniah, and these are against Judah and their sins. Okay, but then it also goes then back to prophecies of hope. Okay, so there's announcements of doom against Judah. Okay, and then they emphasize the hope from the perspective of these readers that, you know, whether they're looking post-exile or in future times, that's kind of what we're doing. So several possible ways to outline the book, each pointing to a particular but partial reading that emphasizes certain aspects of the book and de-emphasizes others. So you have kind of 6 parts: the announcement of doom, a description of doom, that's chapter 1, and then you've got the last chance to repent, that's the beginning of chapter 2, and then there's some pronunciations against the nations and their gods, that's the rest of chapter 2. He kind of announces doom against the overbearing city, that's the beginning of chapter 3, and then joy to Jerusalem, that's the rest. It's chapter 3, verses 14 through 20. Those are interesting verses, 14 through 20, because it actually goes from focusing on Jerusalem and Judah to, it opens it up to the world being healed and gathering, as it says. And I'll just kind of end with this because I know that I wanted this to be kind of a shorter video. But it says, shout for joy, fair Zion. And anytime we see Zion in these verses, we're talking about Israel, or we're talking about Jerusalem. Cry aloud, O Israel, rejoice and be glad with all your heart, fair Jerusalem. The Lord has annulled the judgment against you. That's verse 15. He has swept away your foes. Israel's sovereign and the Lord is within you. You need not fear misfortune no more. Again, these are from my study Bible, so it's going to be slightly different. Okay. It says, in that day, this shall be said to Jerusalem, have no fear, O Zion, and let not your hands droop. Your God, the Lord, is in your midst, a warrior who brings triumph. He will rejoice over you and be glad. He will shout over you with jubilation. He will soothe with his love those long disconsolate. I will take away from you the woe over which you endured mockery. At that time I will make an end of all who afflicted you, and I will rescue the lame and gather the strayed, and I will exchange their disgrace for fame and renown in all the earth. At that time I will gather you, and at that time I will bring you home. For I will make you renowned and famous among all the peoples in the earth, when I restore your fortunes before their very eyes, saith the Lord. So it's a great ending for hope. Look for opportunities to be hopeful. We live in a pretty despairing time, so emphasize those hopeful messages. We are Israel, experiencing similar exile themes, and powerful who have kind of exerted their control over us. And these are great metaphors for our time and the freedom that comes when we recognize that Jesus Christ is our Savior, and that he loves us and he does everything for us. So those are those 3 books. Good luck this week. Focus on, if you haven't done the assessment, you may want to plan that out for the next couple of weeks. I invite you to be present with us this coming Saturday at our conference. We're going to look at New Testament issues and situations and spend some time kind of wrapping our brains around what that's going to look like again. I know we did it last training, but this is going to give us another good look at it. So please plan on attending. There was an email sent out with a flyer. If you did not get that, reach out to me. Okay. So with that in mind, we'll see you in the next video.